Dungeons and Dragons, Endless Quest Book, Mountain of Mirrors. In the Mountain of Mirrors, you are an elf named Landon. You are 5 feet 5 inches tall. Although slender, you are very strong and quick on your feet. You are 270 years old. And since elves live to be about 1,200 years old, you are still in your early teens in humans. Your hair is a dark chestnut brown and hangs straight to your shoulders. Your eyes are emerald green, and like all elves, you have elven sight, allowing you to see objects in the dark by the heat they give off. You speak a number of languages, including those of orcs, goblins, ogres, and halflings, as well as the common tongue of humans. Although you are young and untried as a warrior, you have trained long and hard and are skillful with both sword and dagger. Your adventure begins in the cold, clear dawn of a late autumn morning in your village of Aralia. Marek, the chief elder of the village, has asked his people to gather in the great hall for an important meeting. Speaking in a low but commanding voice, Marek addresses his people. For 3 months now, no caravans have reached our village. Supplies are running very low. Someone or something has completely cut Aurelia off from the land beyond the mountains. We have sent parties of elven warriors to discover what is wrong, but none have returned. Soon the great snows will come, and our village will perish without supplies. If we are to survive, someone must open the way to the land beyond, to the mountains, so caravans can once again get through. The Council of Elders has met all night in secret session and decided to choose by lot an elf from the village to try to open the way to the land beyond the mountains. The council feels that maybe one elf may succeed where many have not. The name drawn in the lottery is that of Landon. Though as yet untried as a warrior, the elders feel that Landon's goodness of heart and strength of purpose are more valuable than fighting experience. Landon stepped forward. Ignoring the grumbling from the older warriors, you step forward and say proudly, Marek, I accept this mission. Please know that I will do my best. Marek continues, Landon, for your mission, the council will supply you with a mountain mule and a portion of our dwindling supplies. We are also entrusting you with our greatest treasure, the fabled sword of the Magus. This sword has many special qualities. It cannot be broken, no matter how hard it is struck, and at your command it will throw a clear golden light over a 10-foot area. The sword of the Magus will hum in the presence of enemies. If you are defeated or slain, the sword will lose its powers. It cannot be used by anyone who is not pure of heart. Prepare yourself, Landon. You leave within the hours. The hour speeds by quickly as you change from your everyday clothes into a gray Swede suit and pants and a gray hooded cloak lined with silver fur. You put a tiny bone-handled knife into the secret pocket inside your shirt, and you lace your tall black leather boots to your knees and begin filling your backpack with supplies. You load it with an axe, rope, oil flask, some herbal medicine, a drinking horn, tinderbox, and torches. Strapping a silver dagger to your belt and slinging a bow and quiver of arrows over your shoulder, you prepare to leave. Following a narrow, rocky trail, you leave your beloved village behind and sped on by your way, the blessings of family and friends. Eventually, Aralia becomes lost in the distance as you climb out of your valley home. Rocky peaks tower above you. Snow covers most of the peaks, but a few wear crowns of gray, ancient rock. One peak stands out above the rest. From time out of mind, your people have called it Shanafria, the Mountain of Mirrors. Snow covers Shanafria on all sides, and its upper third is shrouded in a sheet of solid ice. When the sun shines, the mountain sparkles like a cold, perfect diamond. As you approach Shanafria, dark clouds blot out the sun, and a chill, piercing wind rises. The path climbs steeply into the roof of the clouds, and several times your mule pulls back on its reins, reluctant to move forward. You sigh in sympathy. If there were another trail, you would surely take it. Mule, you say finally, Sometimes there's no choice, and you have to do things you don't like, so stop fussing and move. Tucking your head down against the wind, you continue trudging up the mountainside, pulling the stubborn mule behind you. The afternoon passes quickly, and soon the day grows gray with the coming of night. The idea of spending the night alone on the mountain does frighten you, but you have no other choice. Just ahead, you spot a sheltered hollow off the trail, and if you hurry, you can make your camp while there is still some light. You reach the hollow just before sunset. You set up your camp, feed the mule, then you set about cooking your own dinner. After eating, you snuggle down into the warmest furs you have and prepare to sleep. You are so tired that your eyes close almost instantly. A small, faint cry reaches your ears. Wide awake, you listen but hear nothing more. You decide it must have been the cry of some night bird, and settling down, you try once more to get some sleep. Again, the cry echoes through the valley, louder now. Alert, you sit up and wait for the next cry. You are sure now that it was definitely a voice you heard, the voice of someone in trouble. The cries seem to be coming from the trail. Drawing your sword and slinging your bow and arrows over your shoulder, you creep quietly down to the trail. You see nothing in the direction from which you came. Help! Help! The sharp but still distant cry comes from behind you. Whirling around, you see 3 elves sprinting full speed down the trail, pursued by 4 ogres. The ogres are 9 feet tall, with greenish-brown skin, snaggly yellow teeth, and sharp black claws, and each carries a pair of spears. Seeing the elves' danger, you start to wade through the heavy snow toward the battle. Close to the edge of exhaustion, the elves stumble more than they run, and as you watch, one elf slips on an icy path and falls to the ground, his weapons clattering away. His companions stop, uncertain, tug his arm and urge him to rise, but he does not move. The elves glance back at the ogres who are gaining on them. Finally, they race on, leaving their fallen friend behind. One of the ogre picks the fallen elf up by a foot. Struggling weakly, the elf dangles upside down. He pulls out his short sword and strikes desperately at the monster. The ogre only laughs and tosses the elf over the cliff that borders the trail. The elf disappears, falling hundreds of feet to the valley floor below. Still wading through the snow, you glimpse the remaining elves struggle between themselves. The larger elf is weaponless and holds the other by both arms. With a sudden wrench, the smaller elf pulls away and rushes back towards the ogres. The ogres stand at the edge of the cliff, laughing about the elf's death. They are surprised and unprepared for the attack. Sword swinging, the elf is upon them both before they realize it. He strikes first at the ogre who killed his friend, breaking his sword off at the hilt. The dying ogre tries to speak, but crumbles to the ground with a broken blade lodged in its body. The elf draws his dagger and flings himself at another ogre. He stabs 3 times before this new foe can draw its own sword and attack. The other ogres crowd forward to join the fight, but there is room on the narrow trail for only one of them. The elf stays out of the range of the wounded ogre's sword, and is unable to move close enough to strike it some fatal blow. Suddenly, out of nowhere, something flies through the air and strikes the ogre on the forehead. The weaponless elf has thrown a snowball to distract the ogre. As he continues to bombard his enemy, the surprised ogre throws up his arms to protect itself. While the snowballs cannot harm it, they do, in fact, confuse it. The first elf seizes his opportunity, leaps forward, and plunges his dagger into the ogre's stomach. Before the body hits the ground, the elf turns and races down the trail. Screams of rage echo through the valley as the 2 remaining ogres rush after the elf. The first ogre grabs up a spear, taking careful aim, and lets the spear fly through the air with deadly accuracy. The spear strikes the elf, sending him sprawling on the icy trail. He struggles to rise, but cannot. With a cry of rage, the weaponless elf charges the enemy. The second ogre throws its spear as it runs. The injured elf raises his head wearily and sees the spear flying towards his companion, and with a valiant surge of strength, he flings himself between them. Both elves fall heavily to the trail. The weaponless elf struggles to his knees unharmed, but the other elf lies crumpled in the snow with 2 spears lodged in his body. Olmus, Olmus, sobs the weaponless elf. The ogres roar with laughter at his cries, and at the sound of their laughter, the grieving elf leaps to his feet and rushes toward them. So you want some of the same, little guy? Keep on coming, Elfie. This spear's for you, growls one of the ogres, waving a spear. The ogre's words stop the elf. He stands hesitantly on the trail, with no weapon to defend himself. What's the matter, chicken? I'll come to you, then, roars the ogre, starting forward. Quick, elf, this way, you yell. You're still too far away to help him, but you're getting closer each second. If you can just reach him, his chances of escape will be better. The elf hears your words and sprints down the trail toward you. Both ogres shriek in anger when they spot you. Quickly, you ready your bow and draw an arrow from your quiver. The arrow narrows the gap between you, and the ogres are almost within range of your bow. At this distance, a bow and arrow is a better weapon than a sword. If you can keep the ogres at a distance, both you and the elf may yet survive this encounter. Heart-pounding, you force yourself to wait till the ogres are within range. Then carefully, you draw back the bowstring and let the arrow fly. The arrows leap from your bow in a deadly arc, whizzing through the frigid air toward the ogres. The first arrow slams into an ogre. It stumbles, but continues to lurch forward. Then zuck, zuck, zuck. The remaining arrows thud into its body. The ogre stops, takes a faltering step, staggers a bit, and then falls. The last ogre kneels by the bloody form of its companion, grabs the fallen spear, and rises. And before you can get off another volley, the ogre draws back the spear and throws it with such tremendous force. Then, with a final growl, it turns and races back up the trail. You hear a low moan of pain. The spear has found its mark. The elf has been hit. Hurrying up the trail, you kneel at the side of the wounded elf and examine him. The spear has passed through his chest, just below his right shoulder. With a shock, you recognize him as Halric, an elven warrior from your village, who left with the last party that tried to cross the mountains. Halric tries to speak, but no words come. He collapses on the snow. Frantically, you tear aside his clothing and listen to his chest. Dimly, you do hear a ragged heartbeat. He still lives, but barely. Working fast, you cut his shirt away from the wound and gently remove the spear. Binding that awful tagged wound with pieces of his shirt, you carry the elf to your camp. Gathering what little wood you can find, you build a fire and wrap the elf in blankets. Then you settle down to keep watch over Halric through the long night. Around dawn, Halric stirs and mumbles, "I killed him." "Oh, you certainly do. I never saw such a good shot with a snowball," you reply. "No, not the ogre. Olmus, my brother. I killed him. If he hadn't tried to save me, he'd be alive now." Tears trickle from the corners of Halric's eyes. "He made that choice," you say in a tear-choked voice. "You must not dwell on his death. Olmus would not want you to grieve so." Halric turns his head, closes his eyes, and is silent. Tears continue to trickle down his pale cheeks. You reach for the horn of herbal medicine shimmering at the edge of the fire, and turning back to Halric, you see he has lapsed back into unconsciousness. All day the wall elf wanders in and out of consciousness, delirious and feverish. You bathe him with icy steam water, but the fever does not break. You keep trying to get Halric to drink some of the healing herbal brew, but his relentlessness only allows a little of the liquid to drip down his throat. The wound, the fever, and his grief over his brother's death are more than he can bear. At nightfall, Halric wakens, his gray eyes large and quite clear. His fever is faded. You reach for the medicine. "No," says Halric in a faint voice. "There's no need. The pain is left. I'll soon be with my brother. I can ask for no more." He fumbles for your hand. You take it and feel his pulse fluttering like a trapped bird. "Please tell the elders we tried, but there were just too many of them." "Too many of what?" you ask. "Orcs, goblins, ogres, frost giant," whispers Halric. "I always knew there was something evil about Shanafria." "Evil? What evil? Please tell me what to expect." In a dying voice, Halric gasps, "Ice caves, mines, monsters and prisoners, death." His pulse flickers for a brief moment, and then is still. He stares at you with his large empty eyes, a small smile on his lips. With a deep sigh of sadness, you prepare to bury Ulrich. Throughout the long night, you gather rocks, and slowly build a rock tomb around him. At daybreak, you lay the last rock with bruised and aching hands. Ulrich is now at peace, and you must go on. You have difficulty forcing the mule around the frozen bodies of the ogre. With a bray of protest, it finally leaps forward, prancing wildly. It dashes up the trail ahead of you, and you run to catch it. The mule is already rounded the boulder ahead of you. Suddenly it gives a terrified bray. Stupid mule. Trusted to make noise like that when you need it to be quiet, you mutter to yourself. You round the boulder, and all thoughts of silence leave your mind. You want to cry out in terror yourself. Directly ahead of you, the trail doubles back on itself like a giant sea. You stand on one side of the trail next to the braying mule. On your left is the mountain wall. On your right is empty air. 40 feet across the chasm is the other side of the trail, and carved into the mountain wall is a cave with the opening framed in ice and snow, and sitting at the opening of the cave is an enormous frost giant and a young white dragon. "Look, Fang," booms the frost giant, his icy blue skin glinting in the sunlight. "We got company. Come on, where are your madness? Greet our guests." Fang, the white dragon, draws its scaly lips back over long, sharp teeth and almost seems to smile. Then it opens its mouth and belches a cone of white frost that rolls across the chasm. The frost falls far short of you. "I've told you once, I've told you 100 times. You have to practice. You missed a quite easy shot. Try again." The giant seems to think you and the mule are nothing but toys for Fang's target practice, and that makes you quite angry. While the giant continues to lecture the dragon, you grab your bow and 3 of your remaining arrows and take aim. Zap, zap, zap. The arrows fly across the chasm and bounce off the giant's armor. Even though your shots were well placed, they have no effect on his thick hide. Surprisingly, the giant laughs again. "Oh, you can't hurt us. You and Fang would make a good team. Tweedledum and Tweedledummer." The dragon rumbles and roars. "Oh, don't like arrows, Fang? We'll blast them again. You're 50 years old. You should be doing better. At the rate you're doing, you'll be 100 before you mount to a hill of snowballs. Now take careful aim and blast." You grab another arrow. Drawing the bow, you aim, and let the arrow fly at the dragon this time. "Eek!" screams Fang as the arrow strikes its rump. It rolls over on its back, digging the arrow deeper into its flesh and making its pain much worse. "Yip, yip, 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 yip," it shrills again. "Well, don't just lie there screaming," says the giant. "Do something. Are you going to let an elf do that to you?" As if in answer, Fang blasts forth a great frost cone with a huge roar of anger and pain. Unfortunately, the frost cone strikes the snow and ice hanging above the cane. The roar echoes and bounces off the narrow-walled trail where you are and the mule stand. As the echoes of the roar fade, you hear another noise. Softly at first, merely a murmur. It grows louder and louder. Soon it sounds like thousands of dragons are roaring, and both you and the giant look upward to see an incredible sight. It looks like the entire mountain is falling. An avalanche. Powdery snow, followed by huge chunks of ice, are tumbling straight down the side of the mountain toward you. "Fang, you stupid idiot! Look like you done," bells the giant. "Just set off your avalanche. Get your scaly bottom and stop screeching. Quick, get back in the tunnel." Fang and the giant are luckier than you. They have shelter. Nothing stands between you and the thunderous wall of snow. You press close to the side of the mountain, grabbing the mule's reins. You back up the trail the way you came, and the mule is quite quick to follow, almost running you over in its eagerness to escape. You race around the corner just as tons of snow, ice, and rocks crash down behind you on the trail. The thundering, rumbling, and roaring go on for long, long minutes. The mountain and trail beneath your feet continue to tremble. When the awful noise finally stops, you look around. The trail is gone. The cave is gone, buried deep beneath a mass of ice and snow. The chasm that was between the two trails is now also filled with snow. If you are to continue, you must dig out the snow-filled trail. It will be difficult and quite dangerous, and a false step you could plunge from the mountain to your death. If you want to go home, turn around and give up and ask for help, turn to page 38. If you want to try to dig out the trail and continue on with your mission by yourself, vote 2. So, if you want to go all the way back home and ask for help, vote 1. If you think time is of the essence and will continue to dig through it yourself, vote 2. Have a wonderful and pleasant day.